Good morning, brothers and sisters, and everyone who's watching. Today is Wednesday, July 29, 2020, and it's a privilege to be able to bring you the message today. Today I will be reading out of Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 8, NIV version. And the scripture says, "What then shall we say? That Abraham, our forefather, according to the flesh, discovered in this matter? If, in fact, Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. What does Scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now to the one who works, wages are not credited as a gift, but as an obligation. However, to the one who does not work, but trusts God, who justifies the ungodly, their faith is credited as righteousness." David says the same thing when he speaks of the blessedness of the one to whom God credits righteousness apart from works. Blessed are those whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never count against them. Our righteousness before God is something that God does to us through our faith in Him. It is a gift, an act of God's generosity. Looking at Abraham's faith, Abraham was nearly 100 years old, had a virtually lifeless body, and had a barren wife who was well beyond her childbearing years. Yet, God told Abraham that he would have a son. And Abraham trusted that God would keep his promise. God reckoned this trust to Abraham as righteousness. Just like Abraham entrusted himself to God, we as Christians entrust ourselves to God's goodness, His generosity, and His ability in keeping promises. God makes us righteous through this faith. Today is my wedding anniversary, my 20th year anniversary. And this place is in Chatsworth Hills. This location is called the Garden of the Gods. This is where I engaged my wife. My friend and I choreographed a stick fight. This stick fight was symbolism for things to come in the future. I recognized in order to continue to grow, I could not rely on myself any longer. I needed my wife's love, assistance, and encouragement for the rest of my life. My wife, in turn, entrusted that I would cherish and protect her for the rest of her life. In the context of our scripture reading today, in Romans, faith is a reliance on God because we've recognized that we cannot rely on ourselves. The key is we recognized. In earlier chapters in Romans, it establishes that we are all liable to God's judgment, and no one can point to their own works, their community membership, or their own merits to God's blessings. All we can do is entrust ourselves to the Lord who raised the Messiah from the dead. Similarly, Abraham was at a dead end. He could not rely on his body nor Sarah's body to give him a son. All he can do is rely on God. Hence, we cannot boast or brag about our trust in God by our own faith as the reason for why we find ourselves recipients of God's blessing. We trust and have faith in God as a response in recognition of our weakness or insufficiency. Thank you everyone for listening. Really hope you enjoyed this message today. Have a great day.